Well, Nun Aleph rather, excuse me, Nun Aleph Amud Bet. Continue. We're going to start the new section now at long last, and that is about the Tikkun Gadol. The Tikkun Gadol that happened in Bayit Sheni. I'm passing out these sheets. We don't need all of them. There's two different kinds of sheets. Give me this sheet. Here you go. Rishima Shuri Hagrid. Passing it out. I'll put it on the screen in a minute. I gotta figure out where it is hiding on my computer at this point because it's from last week that I had it out.
Thank you.
To see where it is. We're gonna learn now about probably I think one of the not the only, but one of the most controversial things that happened in Bayit in the 20th century rather, related to this Gemara. The Gemara refers to the construct of an Ezrat Nashim, a specific area for men and women to be separate, and it wasn't in the original plans, as we'll see momentarily. Some of the discussion. So if you look at we'll start first just with the Gemara itself before we get into the Shiurei Hagrid. I'm in Nun Aleph Amud Bet, about 7 lines from the bottom, 8 lines from the bottom. V'katlinu is the first word. B'motzei Yom Tov, we have that quote from the Mishnah. My Tikkun Gadol. What is the Tikkun Gadol? This great correction that was made. It's mentioned Tikkun between Mincha and Marv. So what is the Tikkun that they made? Because it refers to some kind of Tikkun that was made. If you look back in the Mishnah on 51a, it mentions right toward the bottom of the page. No, it's on the top of 51b. I'm sorry, my mistake. Where is it? I somehow have lost it. Was I originally in the right place? Oh, I'm sorry. I did make a mistake. It was on 51a. That's what I originally thought. Third line down in the Mishnah. 51a, from the bottom. You could look up what, 2, 4, 5, 6 lines up. Yeah. The second line of the Mishnah. Start there. B'motzei Yom Tov Rishon Shachag Yard Le'ezrat Nashim U'Metaknin Sham Tikkun Gadol. Right? They make a great tikkun, and then it says what that tikkun seems to be. Oh, they made the menorah, they made this, they made that. No. The Gemara says that's not the Tikkun Gadol. So now look at 51b. My Tikkun Gadol. The Tikkun Gadol is not that they made lamps and that with ladders and all sorts of things and menorot and lanterns. That's not it. It wasn't candelabra, but rather my Tikkun Gadol. Rabbi Lazar. Keotashi Shaninu, Chalaka Haitaba Rishona. The first Beit HaMikdash, the walls in the area known as the Ezrat Nashim were smooth. I'm sorry, I went 51b, 2, 4, 6 lines up from the bottom.
Okay.
Chalaka Haita Barishona. Meaning in the first Beit HaMikdash, it was smooth walls. All right, what was smooth? The area, Rashi tells us, third line in the wide lines of Rashi. There were no protrusions, no whatever you'd call them, pieces sticking out in Bayit Rishon. V'kifua gezustra. But what they did was they surrounded it with some kind of a balcony. How did they surround it? Rashi's filling in the gaps. Third line in Rashi, wide lines, V'kifua gezustra, not nuzizin bakotlin boltin min hakotel saviv saviv. They would have these pieces, pegs of some sort. I imagine they were larger beams. They were sticking out of the walls on all sides in the Ezrat Nashim. Saviv saviv all the way around. Chol shana misadrin shan gezustraot luchin shekorin blank. They put boards on top of these protrusions to make a balcony. The Tikkun Gadol was every single year they'd have to put this up ad hoc. They would assemble it, i.e., they didn't leave it that way. The point was that the women could also watch. Yeah. So because you're not so we give it Gezustra. This is interesting. Rashi says they would stand. But then it says, nashim yoshvot milamala v'nashim milamata. They made a takana that women should sit on top and the men should sit down below. Adayom Azah, I don't know how the women got up there. I don't know how high it actually was. I don't know. Was it 3 feet off the ground? Was it 25 feet off the ground? I'm not sure. I've not gotten to the bottom of it myself, the balcony. And if it was very high, how did the women get up there? And even if it wasn't so high, they still had to get up there somehow. Was it little stairs? Was it a little ladder? They're putting women on a ladder. It doesn't. The whole problem is tznius. They're going to put women climbing up the step ladder. So maybe the steps that they made. I don't know. It was in the Ezrat Nashim.
Why was it permanent?
Oh, we're coming to it now. Hold on. We're coming to it. Your question is a good one. It's going to be the Gemara's question. But first, Tanu Rabbanim. Rishona hayu nashim b'fnim, v'nashim b'chutz. V'ayu b'ayim l'idei kalat rosh. In the beginning, the women were inside, closer to where the performances were taking place, which was also in the Ezrat Nashim. But it was people we saw in the Mishnah, juggling, fire, doing flips, all different things. Only the Hasidim, Rishonim, are doing it. Everybody else, the pious people are doing it, but everybody else is standing around and they're just they're watching. That's all it is. It's musical instruments, it's dancing. It's not that everybody was dancing. It's that only the people who were on a high level were the ones who were doing the dancing. Hasidim v'anshei Maisa. Everybody else is watching. So originally the women were inside and the men were outside. But they came to frivolity. They were not behaving. The people were basically flirting with each other, whatever it is. They weren't. There was no longer an atmosphere that we're in the Beit HaMikdash. It was a social hour. So what do they do? Then they flipped it. This is interesting. The women first were much closer to what was happening, and then they didn't know what to do. So they said, let's put the women behind. Why? The assumption was once the men are closer in, they'll look forward at the performance. They won't look behind them at the women. Didn't work. Right? It's still the same problem, right? So what did they decide? Second to last line. So they made a takana, the women would sit above and the men below. How did they do it? The way we just read. Protrusions, boards, the women are elevated somehow. That's the origin of the Ezras Nashim. That's why in most of the older, not all, but most of the shuls in Europe, if they had a women's section, the women's section was always upstairs because the Ezrat Nashim was always upstairs. It was elevated. Now, the truth is, a few things to back up before we go to the question, which was George's question that the Gemara also came to. How could they be doing this with the building in the Mikdash? A few things. First, that there was already an area called the Ezrat Nashim, which was really because men and women could mingle there. It was before the 15 steps of which make the famous Shir Hamalot. There are those 15 steps, which in our case, the people were coming down the steps, the Kohanim with shofarot, the announcement that they're going outside to get the water. We learned that in the Mishnah a few weeks ago. However, then there's 15 steps up. Then there's called Shar Nikanor. And then internal to that, that's already the Azara where the Korbanot are being offered, right? And in the Ezrat Nashim, of which there is one in Bayit Rishon and in Bayit Sheni, but in Bayit Sheni, it seems to be a larger plaza. Certainly in the time of Herod, we saw that at the beginning, Hordus, that he expanded things, right? That he made it look so ornate. So this seems to be talking more about Bayit Sheni, where they ended up instituting this. It was more of an issue of Kalat Rosh, etc. Whether this was actually the case in Bayit Rishon or not, less clear, because it says Chalka Haita Ba Rishona B'Kifu Gezustra, about 7 lines up from the bottom that we read. So is that statement a statement about what happened in Bayit Rishon, or is that more Bayit Sheni? It's quoted from a Masechet Midot, which is really written about Bayit Sheni and its dimensions. So it's a bit of a question. About when it says it was smooth in the first Bayit, does that mean, and then they would ad hoc make an Ezrat Nashim, or no, it was really in Bayit Sheni that was required. So the question would come up, well, were the people less frivolous in Bayit Rishon? Apparently so, because of the awe of the Beit HaMikdash in Bayit Rishon, they had more reverence for it than in Bayit Sheni. There are those who argue, not found here in Rashi, I don't remember who it is now who said it, I don't want to misquote, but one of the Achronim, I believe, pointed out, like during Bayit Rishon, the main Yetzer Hara was like Avodah Zarah, things like that, less of an Avodah Zarah toward znut, toward licentious behavior. Bayit Sheni, there already was no longer a pull towards idolatry and the baser sense of idolatry. Instead, there was more of a pull towards intermingling of peoples and znut, licentious behavior. Therefore, they needed to take more precautions in Bayit Sheni than in Bayit Rishon. So that's the second point I wanted to make. Yeah, please, Judah, go ahead.
Is a physical evidence for this of what you just described when you visit the Bet Knesset in Kfar Nachum. You can see Zrat Nashim with the big window was upstairs, Nashim above, and this is the time that Bet HaMikdash Adain Kayam or thereabout, correct?
Right, exactly. So now in the 20th century, as you know, this became a flashpoint within the world of Orthodox Judaism and other groups, but continuing to have a Mechitza, right? This was like a big flashpoint. This is the headquarters Gemara. You're in it right now. This is the headquarters Gemara, and it's related to this. And you'll note that the Gemara doesn't tell you how high the Mechitza has to be, and doesn't say, and right. And we should be mindful of that reality. And I gave two shiurim about this series years ago, maybe in 2014 or something. I think it's recorded. I think it's one of the only shiurim I have, like it's on YouTube or something from back in the day. So it was about the history of Mechitza from the halacha through the halachic sources, how it develops, and what the flashpoints were in the 20th century. And Kamakum Hara to give you the whole shiur, but just to say, there's a little bit of like a tamtzit. So the idea that the men and the women should be separated at time of tefillah, certainly, maybe even more than that, is already found in this Gemara. Note that this wasn't even tefillah; it was a simcha beit shoeva. Right? They weren't davening; they were watching the performance, and they were worried because they were in the shul of the Jewish people in Beit HaMikdash.
The Kalos Rosh, was it extensive all the time, or was it during certain holidays?
So that's part of the question, right? So they were davka in the moment of the dancing and the simcha and the revelry, and the simcha can bring to a person the Kalut Rosh, right? Right. So that's okay. So that's exactly. That's part of the issue. It was more open, right? It was lahavdol, like I try to institute here in the shul to make sure that in Simchas Torah there's a mechitza also on Simchas Torah when we're dancing. And there's people say, Simchas Torah, who cares? That's what the Gemara is about, isn't it? That's exactly what the Gemara. That's the subject of the Gemara. So you don't have to be like a big machmir or like, right? That's the subject. So Davka for the dance, I try. I'm not very successful, as you know. I try. Sometimes more successful than others. Wouldn't be too self-deprecating. But I try to say, let's close the door. The women will be on that side. The women can dance. I don't mind. Do the other your side, we'll do our side. Okay. But this was a very big flashpoint, obviously, and among the earliest reforms of reform Judaism is the removal of the Mechitza in the 1800s. It's not the first, but it's close to the first. And so on and so forth. And of course, you come to America, a lot of issues that Klal Yisrael dealt with this, but okay, maybe it receded and maybe took on other forms. Now, in terms of other flashpoints, we'll stick to the Gemara cheer.
The davening was taking place in the Ezra Sanachim, even though.
So that's the thing. There's not davening. It's dancing. It's all night, a party, getting ready. So the assumption seems to be that they had to also make sure that everyone was standing separate, etc. What's interesting is I'm just pointing out that like it doesn't say that there's like a Mishnah saying that every shul shall have a mechitza, and in other words, there was a case to be made by those who were opposed to mechitza on the books, based on the books, that like there's no Mishnah that says you need to have a mechitza in a shul. It's not in the Shulchan Aruch. It's the Minhag Yisrael, and it grew up that way. But then you have Rav Moshe Feinstein saying it's Deoraita, and you have and you have the Rav Shrine Gewalt. It's a Christianization of the synagogue. I mean, these were very, very stark about this, and very eish lahava on this issue, right? And you can't even hear the shofar, and the shul doesn't have mechitza. I mean, this was very, very strong. I say it every time. Around Rav Gedaliah Dov Schwartz says that Sal left his job because the Baal Batim said take away the mechitza. He called the Rav. The Rav said, Yarg vel Yavor, leave. It was 1952 52 or 53. He left in the middle of the night, took a train in the middle of the night with his family over. Who's beloved, but they told him, Rabbi, we're losing members. We have to do something to membership. We're taking away the Mechitza. We hope you understand. He called his rabbi. The rabbi is screaming into the phone, Yarg v'yavar, out. So there was a lot of back and forth. Regensburg, he said it was a minhag, but maybe there was more leniency if it was temporary. It said it was the whole thing with the HTC. Okay, if you're interested, I'll send you the recording of the shir. It's on file somewhere. It's online somewhere. Anyway, all to say, okay, but that's what it was about. And when you learn this Gemara inside, the whole thing is darshan from here. The whole thing is darshan from here. Nachon. Because the post were very strong about it. And we should be strong about Adi Yom Hazeh. I'm not making light of it. I'm just pointing out the context is not even davening, and they're saying separation. Not even. Anyway, please, Judah, go ahead. One more thing, please.
The last half a sentence on Rashi in the bottom of the thing explaining, this is the Yemei Beinaim, this is 12th century. He says, V'lasot gader beYisrael shelo yavou lidei kilkul.
Yeah, I'm getting there. You read ahead in the Gemara.
Well, he explained. No, I'm just reading Rashi.
Yeah.
He explained the whole Megillah.
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, for sure. If you look at the Rishimot Shiurim that you have, I gave you a sheet. It has a blue arrow on it. For the people who are on the phone, you won't have that, but you have it over here in front of you. Okay, it's over here where it says on the Mishnah, Yordin le'ezrat nashim v'taknis sham tikun gadol. Is that visible to everybody on the call? Yes? Yeah. Yehudi, see? Okay. We're learning that part. This is Rav Soloveitchik. It's not a polemic. This is actually what he said in the shir about this Mishnah and Gemara. Yordin le'ezrat nashim v'taknis sham tikun gadol. They go into the Ezrat Nashim. They go down into Ezrat Nashim. How do they get down into Ezrat Nashim? They go down the steps. With Gemara, my tikkun gadol, I'm Rav, who was it? Rav Elazar, yeah? I'm Rav Elazar. Did I quote it the right way? Yeah, I'm Rav Elazar. I got it right. Okay, my tikkun gadol, Rav Elazar, v'chulei, chalakai tabar rishon, v'kifu gezustra, v'kinu sheyu, nashim yoshvat milamala, v'anashim milamata, adkan. Okay, next. Hine. Likanes le'ezrat nashim yicholim lavo gam derech michutz lamikdash. Couldn't you get to the Ezrat Nashim also from outside of the Beit Mikdash? There's a door on the other side, on the west side. Imkain, Amayim Farashid on Mishnah, on the east side rather. Amayim Farashid on Mishnah, she yardu davka me Ezrat Yisrael Ezrat Nahanashim Latakin Latikun Agadol Lenichlusu Shama B'derech Acheret. Why did the Mishnah formulate this as they went from top to bottom? They went down the 15 steps in order to make this Mechitza, basically, to make this Ezrat Nashim. Why did they do it in that order? V'yuvan al pi mashakatav Rashi's Vizel Shono. Here's what Rashi said. Kohanim uleviim yordin v'chulei ki mitzvat shmir mikdash mutal ala kohanim v'alaviyim. Why did Rashi write this? Because the mitzvah of defending the honor of the mikdash falls upon the kohanim and the leviyim. V'gemashe katav Rambam in Parak Chet Me'ilcha Beit Bechira Halacha Lamed Aleph and Halacha Aleph and Bet. Vizel Shono shmir mikdash mitzvat aseh v'chulei v'ashomrim heim kohanim v'alaviyim. Alei mutar achova limnoa kalut rosh b'veit Hashem v'shelo yikra chilul kedusha. It's incumbent upon the Kohanim and the Levium to be the guardians of sanctity inside the Beis Hamikdash. They're the ones who have to watch it and guard it to make sure that it should not become mechulal. Lefichach davka Kohanim v'Levium hashomim et Hamikdash yodimi Ezrat Yisrael le'ezrat nashim l'taken ha'tikun hagadol le'tzorach shmir Hamikdash mikalut rosh. Davka Kohanim and Levium made the tikun every year, and they didn't just leave it up. One of the reasons is so Kohanim and Levim should be the ones each year to do it. And Dafka Kohanim Levim. Therefore, they come down from the place. Ezrat Yisrael means it was already on the top of the steps, just through the Shar Nikanor, and they would come out and go down and make this happen. He lorak mishmar mikdash mituma elaf michil kedusha al yidei arayot. If they'll be careful, it shouldn't be desecrated through licentious behavior. V'nira deshmir mikol davar avera he mitzvah shmir mikdash. And we find that guarding anyone from any kind of avera, that's part of the mitzvah of the shmir of the mikdash. V'araya dahabit tfilat al anisim b'Chanukah omrim ufinu ateichalecha v'ti harot mikdashecha v'charkach v'idliku nerot b'chatzu godshecha. The yavsha hayad lahadik anerot v'lasot avoda kol zman shlo pinot heichal mikol avoda zar v'avera the pinot heichal he mitzvah shmir mikdash. The whole idea of in al anisim that they lit the candles is only a result of, or or consequent to emptying the heichal of impurity and purifying the mikdash. Then they could light the candles. And whose job was that? The Kohanim. V'hinei b'aftar parshat shkalim ha'ashkenazim matchilim beven sheva shanim Yehoash b'molcho v'korim b'inyan chizuk aberek habayit. Next page. Sheshach b'pashtut li'inyan hashkalim. It's obvious that it seems to have to do with shkalim because it's parshat shkalim. Bram, and yet, however, minhag asfardim hu l'hatchil v'yichrot Yehoyada v'yavo kol am haaretz beit habal v'yitzehu et mizbechotav v'tzalamav shavru. That part is in the Sephardi Haftorah, not in the Ashkenazi one. V'tzarachiyim d'mayin zep l'parshat shkalim. What does it have to do with anything with parshat shkalim? V'nira, says the Rav, the ibur avodah zara me'amikdash he mitzvah shmirat hamikdash. Destroying avodah zara is part of the shmir of the mikdash. L'chein shayach leberek habayit l'shkalim. U'lefizem avur la bin ha'gezustra eno asur mitam hakol bichtav. V'hu mishum shebniyata haita mitzvah shmirat hamikdash v'lechein haita muteret. What is the Rav saying at this last line here? What is the Rav teaching us? That the idea of the building of this balcony was not prohibited, even though there was a specific prohibition to add to the construction of the Beit HaMikdash, to build into it, because what they were doing is the building of this object, the balcony, was itself a fulfillment of the Shmir of the Mikdash, and that's what made it permissible. If you look back now into the Gemara, the last, second to last line, the third to last word on 51b, Heichi Avid Hachi. The Gemara asks, how could they build this balcony? How could they build anything? V'aktiv, doesn't it say pretty explicitly in Sefer Divrei Hayamim Aleph, hakol bichtav yad, bichtav, miyad Hashem, alai hiskil. Right? So, and it goes on, kol malachot tatavnit. So the point is, everything is written in writing. It's from the hand of Hashem, which has given me the wisdom, i.e. the seichel, the intellect, i.e. because he had the plans. That's what David's telling Shlomo. Everything's written. He got it from who? According to the Gemara in Zvachim, got it from Shmuel Navi. They're being passed generation to generation. He had the blueprints. So you can't just add stuff. How can you just add things? So the Rav says, you know what the answer to the question is? They weren't adding anything. They were finding a way that they could thereby fulfill the mitzvah Shmirat HaMikdash. Who's incumbent upon? Kohanim. Therefore, the Mishnah goes out of its way to tell us that they would come down into the Ezrat Nashim, because Davke, Kohanim, Levim were the ones to build it. They were licensed to do it because it was protecting the system.
The platform wasn't permanent.
Exactly. So that's already a thing in the Rambam, that the Rambam says that in one place he talks about it, they put up this platform, and in another place says you can't build in the Mikdash. So how could they do it? The answer is, one of the answers is, it was impermanent. They put it up and they would take it down. Dafka to show it's only a temporary thing. Now, by the by, the rest of the time, were women allowed in Ezrat Nashim? Yes, they were.
So are we assuming that it wasn't called a throw to be more serious?
Right. The problem was the atmosphere was not serious because there was dancing and singing and revelry and music, and it was a party atmosphere. So that's where they had to have more guardrails, up. But if men and women were coming to the mikdash, don't forget they didn't how shall I say this? They didn't have Shachos Mincha Marav on in the Beit HaMikdash, not in the way we understand it, right? It didn't happen that way. There were korbanot. People came and individuals came, and the korbanot tzibur were happening. Now, people did have tefillah already, and Bayit Sheni, they have Anshe Knesset Gdola are already the ones who wrote this Shemona Esrei. People are already saying it, but how often are they saying it? Is it every day, 3 times a day? Are they going to shul? How does it work? So those things develop more, and Judah was pointing out about old Bate Knesiot, even in Eretz Yisrael, where Dafka, you do see a development with already Mechitzas. There already is this idea that does exist in some of them, by the way. Some of them, it's not clear if they had a Mechitza, just so you realize. And some places they didn't have Mechitza for a very simple reason. Women didn't come to shul. In Europe, that was true in many places. And that was what it was. And they added an Ezra Nashim at some point. It's true in many of the shuls in Europe, in fact. That was the minig. That was the minig. And the women would come. They come on Shoshana Yom Kippur, they hear the shofar, as they go on top and listen. And, Okay, but all to say, this is at least an issue. So the Rav had his answer. which is a unique and creative answer. Yeah, it's a fulfillment of the mitzvah of Shmirat HaMikdash. Therefore, the Kohanim are the ones that do it, and therefore it's not a violation of this prohibition. Others say it was temporary. Another idea, it's only a prohibition maybe in the Azara, but it's not a prohibition in Ezrat Nashim. And maybe they were allowed to build in Ezrat Nashim. Maybe.
If that were the case, they could have left it burning.
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah, fair point. So bottom of Nun Aleph and Bet, Amar Rav, Kra Ashkechu Vidarush. They found a pasuk and they darshaned that pasuk, and therefore they decided to go with that pasuk. Before you turn the page, do Rashi. For those who have like an arch course, something into the page. Hold on, look at Rashi, bottom of 51b. B'achtiv, second last line. Gabe David HaMelech shetziva et Shlomo al midat habayit ubinano. He taught him everything he needed to know about how to build the mikdash. Right? Again, the same beautiful idea that even though David didn't build it and Shlomo carried it out and made it manifest in a physical sense, another way in which David HaMelech laid the groundwork. And ideationally, David HaMelech built the mikdash. Mizmor Chanukah habayit leDavid. Now, not in bricks and mortar, because assembled, but excuse me, that was a bad word. Not bricks and mortar constructed, but assembled, because he assembled all the materials. And in words and in the songs and the music and the poetry and whatever you want to call it, all derech ruach hakodesh, that's already written before David HaMelech ever leaves the world. P.S. He also gives them all the blueprints of how to build it. So that's this pasuk. That's what Rashi's telling us. He told them everything you need to know. Hakol bichtav miyad Hashem alai haskil, hiskil. Excuse me. Kol melechet hatavnit sheodiyo Kadosh Baruch Hu ayidei Gad HaChozeh v'Natan HaNavi. According to Rashi here, it's Gad HaChozeh and Natan HaNavi. I'm pretty sure though that it's scrolls that Shmuel gives him in the Gemara in Zvachim. I could be mistaken about that. It's definitely it's Benoyo Shel Olam. They're talking about the Noyo Shel Olam. Whole discussion there. I think it's Zvachim Nun Daled. That could have been a guess on my part, but I might be right. I don't know.
What does that mean?
A seer. A seer.
That's
The Chozeh, not the Navi.
That's definite.
Well, that's one of the interactions he has with God.
Yeah.
David el God. He speaks to him, but God spoke to him. He spoke to God, but God spoke to him. Yeah. So God a Chozeh and Natan HaNavi. And that's the plans. Kra Ashkel, they found a pasuk, and what is the pasuk going to teach? As Judah pointed out from Rashi a few minutes ago, Shetzarech lahavdil anashim nashim v'lasot geder b'Yisrael sh'liyavo lidei kilkul. That they have to separate between the men and the women, and to make a certain guardrail. A geder is a fence within the Jewish nation. They shouldn't come to some kind of kilkul, means some kind of ruin, that they would do something that was wrong. So what's that pasuk? It is a pasuk from describing the end of days from Sefer Zechariah. V'safta haaretz mishpachot levad, mishpachat Beit David levad, u'neshehem levad, mishpachat Beit Natan levad, u'neshehem levad. So it's describing some kind of a mourning period where eulogies, the land is delivering a eulogy, and the families are separate. David is alone, the family of David and his wives are separate. And Natan, same thing. I didn't read you I read you too much from the pasuk because I have here the expanded Torah right? It just gives you the part about David and Neshehem, Levad. The men and the women were separate. Yeah.
Sorry, let's go back to this Chozeh. Because I thought God was a Navi. So
God is a Navi. One of the names for Navi is a Chozeh.
Why is he?
That was his nickname. It was his name.
Okay. I thought being a seer is usher, where you're forcibly.
No. It's not the same thing. The words for a Navi, a Chozeh, a Ro'eh with an Aleph,
Okay.
a Navi.
Okay.
They're all different terminology for Shmuel at one point is called a Ro'eh, not with an Ayin, but an Aleph. Yeah.
So wait, is the Gemara saying that for a hesped they were not, the women were in a different
It says they were standing separate. It doesn't say they were in a separate room. It says they were separate. That's what it describes. And what is it describing? Look at Rashi. B'nevuat, top of the page, top of 52a. B'nevuat Zechariah, umitnabei la'atid, sheyispadu al Mashiach ben Yosef, shenerag b'milchemet Gog u'Magog, uchtiv, mishpachat Beit David levad, u'neshem levad, she'afilu b'shat hatzar, tzarich la'avdil anashim minashim. So it's the nevuah of Zechariah, and he the prophecy is in the future there will be a eulogy delivered from Mashiach ben Yosef. There's a whole tradition that before Mashiach ben David will come, there'll be someone else called Mashiach ben Yosef who will herald from the house of Yosef, and unfortunately will be killed in this cataclysmic war at the end of days called the War of Gog and Magog. And it describes there even the family stood separately, the men and the women. Even in a time of tsar, meaning even at a time of pain, when who's thinking about anything other than their pain, so you have to keep the women separate there as well. That's what they darsh in the pasuk to countervail the pasuk that told them the blueprints should not be altered.
And this is so this person going to learn a kal vachomer, and when there's revelry, is that?
Yeah, right there, line 3. V'alo dram kal vachomer. Umala atid lavo she'oskim behesped ve'eni yetzer hara sholeit bahem amra Torah anashim levad v'nashim levad. If in the future, when this happens, they're all involved in eulogizing, there's no Yetzer Hara that's moving around with anybody. The Torah still says the men and the women should be separate. So achshav she'oskim b'simcha v'Yetzer Hara sholeit bahem alachad kama v'kama. Yeah. So if they're engaged in a simcha and the Yetzer Hara is moving around, so all the more so. Second to last line in the wider lines of Rashi at the top of the page, Asukin behesped, Rashi, Bo'otasha, v'mitzter in a mekel rosho maher. If you're in a state of pain, you're not going to become frivolous too quickly. There's no Yetzer Hara that's ruling anything. So there'll be a time when the Yetzer Hara itself can be destroyed, right? So there won't be the Yetzer Hara is not going to be sholeit. So now, what does that Yetzer Hara not being sholeit mean? In the context we're saying it, it refers to the fact that everyone's sad, and therefore there's no Yetzer Hara that's sholeit. However, there's also the possibility that this is this hesped is not actually such a sad hesped. Maybe it too is revolving around something that might be somewhat joyous. What's that? So the Gemara says, "Ha hesped amay avidate." Like, what's its function? What's the background? So pligi ba Rabbi Dosav Rabbanan. Chad Amar al Mashiach ben Yosef shenerag. That was what we saw. But there's another possibility. Chad Amar al Yetzer Hara shenerag. That the Yetzer Hara was destroyed, and now that people were saying a hesped on the Yetzer Hara, some hesped it would be, right? So the Yetzer Hara was destroyed. It's the end of days. Anything can happen. The Yetzer Hara was destroyed. There's no more evil inclination. They're saying a hesped on it. It's end of days. There's things happening that are beyond the ken of our understanding. So, it makes sense that it would be referring to something sad, because indeed it says in the pasuk in Zechariah, same parak, 2 psukim earlier, it actually mentions the idea v'hibitu elai, they should look upon me, eight asher dakaru v'savdu alav kimisped al hayachid. Right, so the point is that there's that it sounds like there's a sadness going on. There's death. Someone got stabbed. Someone got killed. It makes sense. Yeah, they'll see the death before them, and they're making a hesped, like one individual who's making a hesped lo aleinu. Rashi says for their own child that they had that died. That's the death of Mashiach ben Yosef. That's what it means to everybody. What's the hesped at the death of the Yetzer Hara? Everybody should be in a state of simcha, not a state of hesped. So my bachu. So what are they crying about? Kidadarash Rabbi Yehuda, as Rabbi Yehuda teaches. La'atid lavam v'oha kadosh baruch li Yetzer Hara b'shochato b'fnei tzadikim. And their future, Hashem will bring the Yetzer Hara and will shecht it in front of the tzadikim. Again, if your view of the Yetzer Hara is quite literally some kind of a creature and walking around with arms and legs and a smile, a devilish smile, no doubt, and it's going to be shechted by a Kadosh Baruch Hu holding a sword, you're entitled to your opinion, and I can't really argue against you, because that is what the words say. I could see a perfect Jew who believes that, and I wouldn't have a good way to argue against them. However, other Jews, maybe some of the Jews around this table, maybe some of the Jews who are speaking right now, see this in very symbolic terms, right? Because Baruch is going to shech the Yetzer Hara itself will be destroyed. It'll be evident to every human being in their heart of hearts that the Yetzer Hara is gone. They don't have a Yetzer Hara anymore. Again, how does the world continue to function after that? I'm not sure. I don't personally understand it. That's the Gemara says, right? So there'll be a shechita of the Yetzer Hara bifnei hatzadikim Uvnifne harishayim. The righteous and the wicked will see it be destroyed, meaning the faculty within the individual that pulls an individual away from Hashem will be gone. Tzadikim, nidmalhem kahar gavoa. The tzadikim, they will feel that the Yetzer Hara that was destroyed was like a huge mountain that was destroyed. Yeah. Urishayim nidmalhem kichuda sa'ara. They'll think it's like a thread, like a hair's breadth that was destroyed. Halalu bochin v'halalu bochin. Everybody's going to be crying when that happens. Why? Tzadikim bochin v'omrim hayach echol lichbosh har gavoa kazeh. Tzadikim will be crying and say, how were we ever able to withstand such a high mountain, a craggy cliff, sharp, imposing, and so hard to climb and get over? But that's tears of relief. How is it that Rishaim will say that it would have been so easy to overcome the Yetzer Hara, and we were simply not able to do it? Even HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again, you want to take this literally? Be my guest. Want to understand it more the way I'm explaining it? Be my guest, right? Even HaKadosh Baruch Hu will, so to speak, be wondering how this could be. Also, from Sefer Zechariah, right? Ko amar Hashem tzvakot, ki palei be'inai she'erid ha'am hazeh bayamim hahem. It'll be wondrous in my eyes. Gam be'inai yipalei. It'll also be wondrous in my eyes. So, as it'll be wondrous in the eyes of those who survive, so it will be wondrous in my eyes, says Hashem. What's that? The way in which the tzaddikim were able to overcome the Yetzer Hara, and how the Rishaim were not able to. And to one, they realized in retrospect what a gargantuan task it was, and the other one realized how close they were, how easy it might have been, but how they failed. So let me pause here for a minute. You see, this is the associative principle of Shas. We already wound our way. We're talking now the rest of the page about the Yetzer Hara. Drush is about the Yetzer Hara. What is the Yetzer Hara? What's it doing there? What's the segue into the Yetzer Hara? Kalut Rosh at a time of Simcha. At a time of Simcha, people's focus goes away easier. They're more apt to connect with others, shall we say, to connect with Hashem, but also connect with others on the lateral plane. And that can lead us down a primrose path that's not necessarily leading to good things, but rather lo aleinu to its exact opposite. So I want to avoid that. So therefore requires an extra measure of, call it zihirut, and a geder. More of a zihirus would be like a vigilance, and a geder to prevent ereva from taking root, because that is the way of humanity. Because all are experts not only at knowing the Dvar Hashem, they're also experts, as part of their knowledge of the Dvar Hashem, of knowing a lot about the human condition. So they seem to know, and they tell us this, and they're warning us about these kinds of things to think about, right?
Which didn't happen at Maaseh Egel HaZahav.
Which did happen at Egel HaZahav.
Women together.
Right. So Gilui Arayat, Shvichut Damim, Avodah Zarah, all three things, right? That's right. The Shvichut Damim is of Chur. The Avodah Zarah is obvious, and the Gilui Arayat, Vaikul Tzachek, right there. But Chazal say. By the way, since we're tonight Lag BaOmer, to have a moment of celebration of Lag BaOmer, why not? Rabbi Akiva, the Rebbe of the Rashbi, whose Hilul is apparently possibly tonight, tomorrow, but of course Rabbi Akiva, a big theme of this period of time. We all like to quote very important quotes from Rabbi Akiva, much less popular than, V'ahavta kamocha zeh klal gadol b'Torah, is in Pirkei Avos Perek Gimel. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Schok v'kalut rosh, margilin le'erva. Right there. You want to have a lot of jokes, and you're going to have a frivolity. It'll accustom a person to licentious behavior. Right, Rabbi Akiva. I'm Rabbi Akiva, right? You understand? Like, it's a big part of Kedusha, is who we are as Klal Yisrael, and it's less popular in certain communities to talk about publicly, but and that's what's going on. It's Mechitza, etc. And by the by, you can understand the logic of how very easily could be extrapolated from here, various communities that put up other Gedarim. Anytime Torah is being learned, maybe anytime there's a wedding, maybe anytime there's a gathering, anytime, like, where does it end, right? Maybe in some houses in the Hasidic belt, maybe at the Shabbos table. The men will be in one room, the women will be in the other room, etc., etc.
That's why the Hasidim, they wear the gartel too.
The gartel is another aspect of this, but I'm talking about the men and the women separation now. But that's another aspect. Anyway, in my house, the men and the women sit at the same table. Everyone's invited, but I'm just saying, you hear the logic. Yeah. I'm saying. They're. You understand why?
Right.
And it's sourced in this Gemara again. There are deot lakan when it's necessary, when it's not necessary, how far you have to go with it. But there's a certain inherent logic stream that you get from learning this, and then the fact that, by the way, the explanation of the Rambam by I think it was the Kesef Mishnah who said, I'm not 100% sure, the Ravid or the Kesef Mishnah, that either it was temporary, that it was built in the Azara. The Rav's explanation of that. Why do you need an explanation? You have a pasuk from Divrei Yamim, and then you have another pasuk from Zechariah. Isn't that good enough? But all these Rishonim realize like this drasha of this pasuk. It's a little bit of a homiletic drasha, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a funeral for Mashiach ben Yosef, and they're going to be standing separate. It's a pasuk in Zechariah, and you're darshaning it like maybe not. Like even if without that pasuk in Divrei Yamim Aleph, if you just look in the Sefer Torah in Parshas Truma, v'chein ta'asu, you can't just decide you're going to make another mikdash. Now the dimensions changed, but the fundamental features stayed the same. And we do have a Masorah, again, it's part of our Amunah, that this was something that was passed along generation to generation. Rashi's quoting Gada Chosen Natan Navi, giving it to David. My recollection is that it was somehow related to Shmuel more directly, because he was David's Rebbe as well, but maybe I'm just mistaken. It's not in the Gemara in Zvachim. In Zvachim, it definitely says that Shmuel shows David where Yerushalayim, where the Hara Bayit is going to be, Benoyo Shel Olam, the sitting Benoyo Shalom. Anyway, but here, this drasha, it's not clear that it's really mitigating the possible Isser. It's a drasha, and that also explains how we're off to the races, for lack of a better term, from one drasha to the next about the Yetzer Hara. So we're in the Gemara here on 52a, right? And we talked just now about how it's wondrous in the people's eyes, we wondrous in Hashem's eyes. Hashem says that what? At the moment of the destruction of the Yetzer Hara, when the Yetzer Hara gets shachted by a Kodesh Baruch Hu, so there's going to be like a hesped. What's the hesped? Everyone's going to be crying. Why are they crying? This one, because they can't believe how they had to overcome all these challenges. They were able to do it somehow. And the other ones, they realized it was so easy to overcome these challenges. Chazal now fill out more of a picture, and these homilies they're coming up now. So we'll spend just 5 minutes, if we can, just to cycle through some of them, about the Yetzer Hara. Amar Rabbi Asi, Yetzer Hara b'tchila dome l'chut shel buchya. At the beginning, the Yetzer Hara is no more than a spider's web. And at the end, it's like the ropes that tie, that pull the wagon. Very thick ropes, in other words. So it becomes thicker. Shenemar, hoi moshche avon bechavlei hashav ucheavot ha'agala chata'a. Right. So the idea of hoi moshche avon bechavlei hashav, oh, you who draw sins with ropes of that are for naught, ucheavot ha'agala chata'a, and like the cords, but it means like, you've ever seen a cord like that pulls like a wagon? It's many ply thick, but if you would take each strand is very, very thin. But when they are put together, they become much stronger. So it's the chut shel buchya that eventually comes to be much stronger. Yeah. Fine. Next, Tan Rabbanan, Mashiach ben David, she'atid lihigalot b'meher b'yameinu. Omer la Kodesh Baruch Hu, sha'al min hadavar v'atein lecha. Hashem asks Mashiach ben David, ask for me anything and I will give it to you. By the way, who is the first Mashiach ben David? It's not a trick question. Shlomo HaMelech. Remember? Right. And if Shlomo has a dream, and Hashem tells him, ask him, what do you want? And I'll give it to you. But the Gemara here, by the way, therefore has to say, Mashiach ben David she'atid lihigalot b'meher b'yameinu. Meaning not only Shlomo HaMelech has happened to, but the Mashiach ben David of the end of days. Yeah? Not the first Mashiach ben David, but the last Mashiach ben David. Right? Will be revealed maybe speedily in our day. Shem will ask him, ask me something and I'll give it to you. Shinemar, as the pasuk says, right at the beginning of Tehillim, Asapra el Chok v'gomer. Right? So basically I ask you, Ani hayom yiladaticha, I birthed you today. Sha'al mimeni ve'etna goyim nachlatecha v'achuzatcha af se'aretz. The pasuk continues, right? So you'll ask for me whatever you want, and I will give it to you, right? The nations are your heritage. V'kevin shara Mashiach ben Yosef shenerag. Since Mashiach ben David sees that Mashiach ben Yosef actually was killed, Omer lefanav Ribono shel olam in mevakish mimcha ela chayim. The only thing I want from you, Hashem, is life. Omer lo, sorry, God responds, Chaim achla amarta, krait nabe alecha David avicha. Your father David already gave a nevuah about this idea. Chaim shal mimcha natata lo. He asked for life from you, and you gave it to him. It's really fascinating that Mashiach ben David, the first one, Shlomo HaMelech, asked for chokhmah and a heart that would understand things. And the Mashiach ben David, he asked for chayim. He wants life. It's a nice idea. I have drushes on all these things, but we're not in the drusha mode
Life
now.
for
We're learning.
himself or life for everyone.
Right. It sounds like he wants it for himself because he saw that Mashiach ben Yosef got killed. According to the Rambam, Mashiach ben David is going to die. Not get killed, but he's going to die. He's not going to live forever. He's human. It's not Eliyahu Navi. He's human. He's going to come and he's going to be born. He's going to live. He's going to die. Human.
But then I thought that the basic Mashiach was going to have
Big machlokes. Big machlokes. Three-way machloket. Either Mashiach arrives and Tchiyat HaMeitim happens right then and there. Mashiach comes and Tchiyat HaMeitim is a much later phase. How much later, nobody knows. Long time. Don't know how to define that. Third option, Mashiach comes and partial Tchiyat HaMeitim for tzaddikim and everybody else after a long time.
Okay.
So,
But everyone agrees it will happen. Just
Tchiyat HaMeitim?
yeah.
Ikar Amuna. No question. No question.
Okay.
The only question is what the timing
You
is.
said in Machlokas, I think what?
No, machlokas when? Machlokas when? No.
Okay.
There's no machlokas about Tchias Meitzim. However, ain't Tchias Meitzim in the Torah, ain't L'chelek Ulam Haba. I should throw it in the garbage over something like that? Chalila, never mind. No. The Mashiach, I don't understand it. Does anybody understand Tchias Meitzim? I don't understand it. Hashem's going to do it. He can do anything. He's a Kol Yachol. He's going to make it happen. I don't understand it, but he's going to make it happen. Okay. But here, Mashiach ben David's going to ask for life. I'm just saying, the life that he asked for here, according to the Rambam, doesn't seem to be eternal life. Okay, because nobody could be eternal because only Kodesh Baruch can be eternal. That's another issue here. But okay, moving right along. Yeah. So Darash Rabbi Avira v'Yitem Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Shiv'a Shemot Yeshul Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is wily. It has 7 different names, 7 different characters. Kodesh Baruch Hu Karo Ra. Shem calls the Yetzer Hara Ra. Shinamar ki Yetzer Lev Adam Ra Mina Urav. Moshe Karao Arel. Shinamar Umaltimate or Lakt Levavchem. David Karao Tameh. Right, the foreskin of the heart. So then David comes along. He calls it the impure one. Shinamar Lev Tahor Birali Elokim. Right, Michlal Deika Tameh. If it's asking for a pure heart, it must be that there's such a thing as an impure heart. And what's the impure aspect of the heart? Yetzer Hara. Shlomo Karo Sonei called him the hated one, the enemy of some sort, but the hated one. Shinamar Imra'ev Sona'acha Hachileu Lechem. Bimtzameh Hashkeu Mayim Ki Gechalim Atachota Arosho. If he's hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him water. Because you're heaping coals upon his head. Hashem Yishayim Lecha, Hashem will give you a reward. Al Tikri Yishalem Lecha. Don't read it that Hashem will give you a reward for this. Rather, Ella Yashli Menu Lecha. Hashem will cause there to be peace between you and your Yetzer. It will no longer cause you to want to sin. Yeah, if you look at Rashi over here, Imra'ev Sonacha, Rashi on the side here, just beautiful. Yitzracha hara ra'ev v'ta'ev la'avera. Your Yetzer Hara is hungry and wants to sin, desires sin. Hachileu lechem, give him bread. Hatrichehu b'milchamta shel Torah dichtiv l'chu lachmu b'lachmi. Go put him into the war of Torah, because it says go war it with my bread. Lachmu b'lachmi, it's a play on words from Mishlei. Yeah, l'chu lachmu b'lachmi, engage in l'chamta. Hashkeu mayim, what's the water you're going to give him? Torah. Dichtiv ba hoikot samei l'chu l'mayim. See yashli menu lach. So you're going to give him water. What's the water? Feed him Torah. It's no longer going to try to remove you from the world. The Yetzer Hara will be your best friend. Everybody will learn with the Yetzer Hara, so to speak. Yeah, that's the idea. You be connected to it more. Okay. Yeshaya Karo Michshol, called an obstacle. Solu Panu Darech. Haru michshol miderech ami. Yom Kippurim. Exactly. So that's the idea, right? Because on Yom Kippurim is the one day that we could be totally cleansed of our chata'im. I mean, it could be any day, but that's the day for Klal Yisrael, whether we're highly deserving or not, if we do tshuva, etc. But that's the idea, and clear a path of the obstacle. What's the obstacle? The obstacle is the Yetzer Hara. So one day of the year, the Satan cannot be mitkatreg, and that's Yom Kippurim. So says the Gemara, right? Okay. Yechezkel karo Evan. Shinemar vasioti leiv ha'evan mibasarchem v'nateglechem leiv basar. Again, beautiful idea. Taking off the heart of stone, they're giving you one of flesh. Yoel karo tzfoni. He called it the tzfoni. What is tzfoni? So literally, the tzfoni sounds like the word safon, like something that is northerly, but it's not read that way. Tzfoni archik me'alechem, right? Which sounds like it's from the initially. You could read it as the one who's from the north, right? But hatzfoni here is instead understood as one that is hidden, tzafun, right? Tanarabanan, but it's tzfoni archik me'alechem ze Yetzer Hara tzafun v'omed v'libo shel adam v'dachtiv al tziya u'shmama l'makom she'en b'nei adam mitzuyim l'itgarot behen. So I'm going to cast out the Yetzer Hara, the one that's hidden in the heart of a human being. I'll push it away to a wasteland, to a desolate place where there's nothing. There's no people there that can be ensnared by it or caught up with it. So here's now continuing with that drush from Sefer Yoel. Et panav el yama kadmoni. His face was toward the Yama Kadmoni, the eastern, the sea of the east. Shenatane na b'mikdash rishon ve'achrivo v'harg tamid hachachamim shabo v'sofo, and the end of it is aiming at the Yama Acharon, the western one. Shenatane na b'mikdash sheni ve'achrivo v'harg tamid hachachamim shabo v'ala ba'ashov tal tzachanato sheminiach umod ha'olam umidgar b'soneim shel Yisrael ki gdil la'asot. Right, so more and more drushes, one pasuk after the next, about what's going to happen with the Yetzer Hara at the end of days. And the point here of these drushes again is to underscore what's going to be at the end, right? With the how the Yetzer Hara is going to go after, went after, and will go after all the Jewish people. Garbus initially saw is essentially euphemism. It's going to leave the Batal Tzachanato. What he's going to try to do will be we'll leave aside the nations of the world. We'll go after the Jewish people. Ki gdil la'asot, because he's done great. Means he's done a lot of things. Amar Abaye v'Tamid Chacham Yotzei Mikula. And with regard to Tamid Chachamim, it's going to be worse than everybody else. What the Yetzer Hara is going to try to do throughout time. Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah. Now, last thing, a little story. So Kihada Abaye, Sham'e Laho Gavra. The story happened where Abaye heard about a man. The Ka'amar Lahai Itata Naknim Veneza Ba'urcha. He heard a man say to a woman, "Let's get up really early in the morning, and we'll go we'll go a far distance together." Nashkim Rashi Nashkim b'Hashkama Kodem Hayom Hashkama Kari Kadmuta b'Shas. We're gonna get up like super early, and we'll go. It's still dark outside. Amar said Abaye, Ezel afarshinu me'isura. I'll stay behind them so that I'll be able to separate them from prohibition, because no doubt something's going to happen between this man and this woman, because they're going out on a trip together. Aza batrayu tlata parse ba'agma. He followed them out 3 parsaot, through a lake. Yavu parshim hadade. Finally, they decided to separate from each other, because they were from 2 different towns. Rashi says, "You have to cross this period, Zelikan. And as they're about to separate, Sham'inu the Ka'amri, he heard that the one said to the other, Urchin Rechika v'tzavtan besima. So Rashi writes, Derech v'chokahi ben shtei mekomotenu v'yavshinu l'lech yachad. We can't keep going together because we've reached the crossroads. V'tzavtin besima. Ilu hayinu yicholim lelech b'derech echad hayanim tzevat shalanu. If we were able to continue going together, that would have been very pleasant. But since we're at a crossroads, what can we do? We have to separate. Amar Abaye then declared himself, Im mandesanili hava, had it been the one who I hate, Rashi, im hayasoni mityacherim haisha, if my hated one would have stayed with that was alone with this woman, Gemara, lo hava matzi leukme nafshe. I would not have been able to withstand the temptation. Yeah, I would have sinned. But Rashi throws in 4 little words at the end of the second to last Dibur HaMatchil there on our page. Ve'al atzmo haya omer. He was speaking euphemistically about himself. He said, if the hated one had been with me, meaning had it been me in that case. He didn't want to say it about himself, so he said it sort of in a euphemistic way. And the idea here, of course, is one of the 7 names of the Yetzer Hara is the Sonei. So Azal Tala Nafshe Ibura Didasha Umitzdaer. He was leaning on the hinge of the door, like a person who is like in Tachanun, like he was leaning on the door, like he was remorseful that he thought so ill of this other person because he underestimated that person's ability to control himself, and he overestimated himself. He realized after, if I had been that person, I don't think I would have been able to stay away from Chata'im. So Ataho Sava, that elder came, that very elder came. Doesn't tell who it is. Is it Elio Hanavi? Is it just an old man was walking by? So I don't know. Tanale, but he taught him, anyone who is greater than their friend, their Yetzer is also greater than their friend. So, okay, that we'll stop here. Guess we have much more to say. We'll start the last line. There's more and more drush. We have to stop somewhere. I just noticed the time. We're almost learning an hour over here, but I hope it was worth it. You got some great insights from Chazal. Each one of these, by the way, pages and pages and pages and pages of Sfarim written on every one of these lines in Hashkafa and Musar, and trying to understand what each line means. Why is it written this way? Why do you have this drasha and that drasha? Why you were comparing it to threads and cords, stavka, and so on and so forth. We'll see there are other pieces, and we'll get back from there and back into halacha, but we're following the maslul of the Gemara. Ad Khan, happy Lag BaOmer, as people like to say. Good. Okay.